I wonder if the Catholic vote isn't split because there's a split in Catholic theology. There are liberal Catholics who really don't believe what conservative Catholics believe, and the liberals also believe that they represent the church, and there are elements of the church that says we don't have to vote on the basis of one issue like abortion. And then the Pope says in his 2004 memo, voting for pro-choice candidates, quote, can be permitted, end quote. So it seems like there's a genuinely liberal element in the church itself.
Okay, let's address that, Doctor. He brings up a point of perhaps confusion amongst Catholics. I think that's part of why we are split. Of course, when the Holy Father says you have to vote for, and I didn't read that particular document, the Catholics can vote for a pro-abortion candidate. Often in the general elections, we talk about this issue when you've got two candidates who both hold a pro-death view. Father Frank Pavone, the head of Priests for Life, often argues that we should vote to mitigate or lessen the evil rather than not vote at all, because then you can have some sort of positive effect. There are those who would prefer not to vote at all. But your thoughts, Doctor, on that and the division that we have between liberal and conservative Catholics. Fundamentally, there's one form of Catholicism, and that's what the magisterium teaches. There are a lot of liberals who want to throw things out, water them down, or change them. And that's what I would often be very leery of. There's not two forms of Catholicism. There's one. There is branches of it in which people choose to practice and believe what they want to believe. Doesn't make it right.
Well, first I need to make a correction on what the gentleman just said. The 2004 memo that he was referring to, that was written when Pope Benedict was Cardinal Ratzinger at the time. He said without equivocation that anybody who votes for a pro-choice candidate is guilty of quote-unquote formal cooperation with evil. Those are very, very strong words, cooperation with evil. Now, he did say that there could be some mitigating circumstances, but he beseeched every single Catholic voter to weigh those circumstances very, very carefully, because there is no mistaking this. The church leaders have said voting for a pro-choice candidate should require the individual to excommunicate himself from communion. So there's no ambiguity there whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm sorry to step on you, Doctor, but Cardinal Burke just came out, or the future Cardinal Burke, Archbishop Burke, at this point in time, just said the same thing. You cannot vote for a pro-abortion candidate.
That's correct. But however, I have to give the gentleman his due in what he said. We do face a problem within our own ranks, is that our faith is being diluted from within. That is a very serious challenge that we have to address. I am often appalled at the weakness of the homilies that I hear from the pew in my church attendance. And I think that, again, as I said from the very beginning, we are slowly allowing liberal ideas to penetrate us and to weaken us. And that is the root of the problem. They are succeeding. And one of the reasons that we are constant a source of their opprobrium is precisely because if they do not weaken us, if we would actually wake up and realize the power that we hold in our hands, we could actually crush the liberal agenda. So we do have that problem, and we have to give kudos to the liberals for weakening us. We have to recognize that we have to turn the tide in the opposite direction. There is no ambiguity at all about what Catholic principles are. The only question is, how do we translate those principles, those moral principles, into a political agenda that we can all rally around? Now, that is very, very complicated. I'm not going to try to belittle how complicated it is to do that. However, I think it's something we should put our thoughts to.
All right. And Griffin, thank you for your call, sir. I appreciate it. It's a great question there. And maybe I'll talk more a little bit about choosing evil versus limiting evil, because, Doctor, there are times when you've got two candidates who both hold a pro-death position. I mean, if you had Barack Obama and, let's say, Hillary Clinton ran for another party, and they both went up and they both believed in abortion, my position has always been, and I kind of side with Father Frank Pavone on this, that you've got to vote for the candidate who will do less harm if they're elected. But if there's a clear choice between the two candidates, you can never vote for a candidate who is fundamentally pro-choice.
Well, I think, though, Drew, in fairness to the Catholics who do vote Democrat, one of the very good counter-arguments that I've heard is, for example, if you have a Democratic candidate that is anti-war but pro-choice, and a Republican candidate who is pro-life but pro-war, I mean, then you have a very serious ethical dilemma.
No,
on your hands.
but those are two different things, in my opinion. I mean, there's, when you deal with war, a lot of times it can be justified to go in. Abortion is never justified. And the victims of war, those who die, are often collateral damage, where victims in the womb are being unjustly targeted and destroyed. So I would definitely vote for a pro-life candidate who is pro-war than to vote for a pro-war I'm mixing it up now. An anti-war candidate that is pro-choice, or pro-abortion, I should say. That's the way to do it. So, but we can talk more about it when we come back. Phones are filled here. There's one line open if somebody wants to sneak in. My guest today, Dr. Grace Vuoto. More conversation ahead. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Drew Mariani. Great to be with you today. Joined today by Dr. Grace Vuoto. Got to just make a point of clarification here. My producer, Cassie, told me that her article is not yet up. The Catholic Swing Vote, the Nation's Veto Power. It will be up momentarily, though. We're going to try to get it up before the end of the hour. If you want to, you can check relevantradio.com, keyword Drew. And I know Dr. Vuoto's people are getting that article up as we speak. So we'll try to get that posted. But check it out for sure. And Doctor, when I left off, we were talking about choosing evil versus limiting evil and the difference in candidates. I'll let you follow up as well with your thoughts on that. Then we'll go back to the phones.
Drew, I think that one of the key points is, especially in the dilemma that you and I have been talking about right now, is that as Catholics, we should have a clearer priority list so that voters can untangle these very issues for themselves. You know, as we said, let's say you're trying to weigh between a pro-choice candidate and a pro-war candidate. We should have a priority list in terms of what issues and in what order we should be addressing them as voters. I think something like that, as simple as that, could be very, very helpful.
All right, let's go back to the phones. David in Kaukauna, Wisconsin. Good afternoon, sir. You are on the line.
Hello, Doctor. I understand the sheer volume us Catholics have with our the poll we have with our sheer volume. Now, what the real problem is not the candidate; it's the party. Is there any way we can influence the parties to get what they to change what they stand for?
It's a good question. He's saying, how can Catholics change the parties? I mean, how can we bring about a change as Catholics?
And that is a key point, and I really thank you for making it. What Catholics can do is they can potentially influence both parties. That is the point of the piece, because we hold the balance of power. Now, bear this in mind. Let's just take a look at history for a moment. Catholics generally pick the winning side in the sense that to whomever they throw their weight, that party tends to win the election. For about a century, Catholics voted with the Democrats, and they were responsible or were key figures in electing people like Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, as varied people as that. You know, even going back to Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, John Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson. It was from the 1960s onwards that Catholics began to realize, you know what, the Democratic Party, they have some elements of their platform which are contrary to our core convictions. And therefore, Catholics voted for people like Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, and they were instrumental in getting those men elected. So what we see here is that Catholics are in a unique position to influence both parties because both parties recognize that they need to court us in order to win. Therefore, we can demand changes to both platforms. And if we do that, we edge the country along a more and more traditional, moral, and Catholic path.
All right, well said. Carl in Chicago listening to us there on the Great 950. Welcome.
Love the show, Drew.
Thank you, Carl.
My comment.
Sure.
You know, part of what the problem is with the American Catholic voter is that American society expects us to remove our Catholicism when we have to do anything involving the secular world. We need to be religious only for the 1 hour in Mass and maybe on high holy days. But other than that, don't bother us with your faith. And, you guys just need to kind of take that back seat. And historically speaking, we're looking at what Kennedy and his run for the presidency, having to kind of bow down to a group of Protestant ministers and say, I won't be too Catholic if I'm in charge.